Hey Star Trek fans, Dan Gunther here. Wanted to do something a little different for a video this week. As Star Trek fans, our fandom is made up of moments, and these moments come to define what we love about Star Trek. I've toyed with the idea of doing top 5 videos on this channel, and I thought I'd start with one that's probably pretty easy, but when it came down to it, it was actually quite difficult. These are the top 5 moments in Star Trek, the original series. In putting together this list, I found that there were many moments in the show that I absolutely loved. And of course, these are just my personal top 5 moments. You will have different ones, I'm sure. And I did actually solicit some opinions from people, both on Twitter and in the community tab on my channel. From both my thoughts and those suggestions, I came up with a list of 18 moments that I had to somehow whittle down to 5. I will, of course, cheat a little bit. There will be some runners-up that I'll talk about later in the video, but for now, these are my top 5 Star Trek original series moments. First off, at number 5, the episode Errand of Mercy was a milestone in that it introduced us to the Klingons for the first time, with an amazing performance by John Colicos, who of course played Kor, a character that he would reprise a number of times in Star Trek Deep Space Nine. In this episode, a brief war ensued between the Federation and the Klingon Empire, with one of the focal points of this war being the planet Organia, home to the Organians, a seemingly agrarian people who hide a secret. They are in fact non-corporeal life forms who put a stop to the Klingon War. This angers both Kor and Captain Kirk, and in what I thought was a brilliant piece of turnaround, Kirk and Kor find themselves arguing in favor of continuing the war, a fact that Aelborn, the head Organian, uses to kind of bring Kirk to his senses and realize what he is arguing for. In some amazing bit of dialogue, Kirk says, "Even if you have some power that we don't understand, you have no right to dictate to our Federation," Kor interjects, "or our Empire." And Kirk, "How to handle their interstellar relations. We have the right," and Aelborn interrupts him, saying, "To wage war, Captain? To kill millions of innocent people? To destroy life on a planetary scale? Is that what you're defending?" Star Trek at its best makes us realize our own foibles, and of course Kirk realizes what he's arguing for and how circumstances have brought him to the point of wanting to fight a war with the Klingons. And he, somewhat chagrined, says, "Well, no one wants war, but there are proper channels. People have a right to handle their own affairs. Eventually we will have..." And then Aelborn comes back with, "Oh, eventually you'll have peace. You and the Klingon Empire will become fast friends," kind of presaging what we will see in Star Trek The Next Generation. But I wanted to highlight this moment in particular where Kirk realizes the folly of what he's arguing for. My number 4 pick comes from the often maligned 3rd season of the original series, the only one from the 3rd season on this list, and in fact the only one from that initial group of 18 from the 3rd season. The episode in question is Platos' Stepchildren, and you may think that I'm going with the interracial kiss between William Shatner and Nichelle Nichols, but that is actually not my pick, but it is probably what this episode is best remembered for. The moment I want to focus on comes from fairly early in the episode. Kirk, Spock, and McCoy beam down to a planet to render aid after having received a distress call. They encounter the natives, a group of beings calling themselves Platonians, who have strange psychokinetic abilities. There is also another individual there named Alexander, much shorter in stature than everyone else, and who does not exhibit the same telekinetic abilities. Kirk at one point asks him, "Alexander, are there other Platonians like you?" And Alexander, somewhat offended, says, "What do you mean, like me?" And Kirk says, "Who don't have the psychokinetic ability." Alexander, kind of relieved, replies, "I thought you were talking about my size, because they make fun of me for my size." Adding this moment to another moment later where Kirk tells him that people of all sizes, colors, and shapes are welcome in the Federation, makes this a top moment for me. I love that in this future that Gene Roddenberry has created, the people of Star Trek don't judge people by their appearance and that sort of thing. It's something that's almost expected nowadays, and indeed Alexander is on guard. He expects to be judged for that. But Kirk and his party are genuinely surprised at that, and they do not judge him based on his size, but rather are asking a simple question about another matter entirely. It's a small moment, but one that I think just really encapsulates the meaning of Star Trek for me, and just shows, without beating you over the head with it, that kind of casual acceptance and celebration of diversity that Star Trek is. Number 3 comes from one of my favorite episodes of all of Star Trek, and that is the first season episode, Balance of Terror. This episode introduces us to the Romulans. The Romulan commander, ably played by the wonderful Mark Leonard, is a centerpiece character in this episode as he goes toe-to-toe with Kirk in maneuver versus maneuver, and this kind of game of cat and mouse that's very eerily reminiscent of a submarine movie. Towards the end of the episode, Kirk has bested the Romulan commander and has disabled his ship, calling for it to surrender. What follows is an amazing back and forth between Kirk and the Romulan commander. Kirk issues the conditions of surrender. Captain, standing by to beam your survivors aboard our ship. Prepare to abandon your vessel. No, that is not our way, the Romulan commander replies. I regret that we meet in this way. You and I are of a kind. In a different reality, I could have called you friend. Kirk asks, what purpose will it serve to die? The commander replies, we are creatures of duty, Captain. I have lived my life by it. Just one more duty to perform. The Romulan commander then self-destructs his vessel, taking his own life and the life of any surviving Romulans aboard. I love this scene because it shows this kind of link between these two military commanders and the kind of bond that their combat has created. That line, in a different reality, I could have called you friend, really speaks to the character of the Romulan commander. And in fact, there's a deleted scene that they didn't go with in this episode where Kirk actually salutes the Romulan commander as he destroys his ship. Definitely not the norm for Star Trek, but an interesting insight into the bond that this has created between those two characters. The moment really is quite touching, which gives it a high spot on my list. Number 2 comes from the second season episode Amok Time. In this episode, Spock undergoes Pon farr, the Vulcan mating drive, returns to Vulcan in order to take a wife. Kirk and McCoy accompany him, and the result is a battle to the death between Kirk and Spock. Spock, thinking that he has killed Captain Kirk, goes to the Enterprise and turns himself over for arrest. However, unbeknownst to Spock, but knownst to us, McCoy has pulled a fast one, giving Jim a shot of some kind of medication that simulates death. Jim is in fact alive, and Spock's reaction upon realizing this is incredible.
There can be no excuse for the crime of which I'm guilty. I intend to offer no defense. Furthermore, I shall order Mr. Scott to take immediate command of this vessel.
Don't you think you better check with me first?
Captain! Jim!
I love the unabashed grin and then the embarrassment that follows that Spock has displayed this naked emotion, showing the true depth of love and camaraderie between these two people. It really showcases their relationship in a way that we've never seen before, but always kind of suspected those two had. I love this moment because it gives us a really clear view of Spock's human half, a part that is rarely allowed to come out. Before I give my number 1 moment from Star Trek the original series, I'll go through a few runners-up. First of all, the episode The Trouble with Tribbles, where Kirk is buried under a mountain of tribbles, is of course a classic scene, and I tried really hard to get that on my list, but there are just too many others that I wanted to get on here. Another one is from the first season episode Arena, where Kirk spares the life of the Gorn. This is almost a science fiction cliche nowadays, where, the hero says, I won't kill you, we have to come to an understanding, we can't be served by this violence. But at the time when it first aired, this was unprecedented. Science fiction was all about killing the alien and overcoming those kind of mysterious forces from beyond our planet. And this would have really been a shocker to audiences at the time, that Kirk would spare this frightening looking reptilian creature who had killed so many of his own. Great moment. Another runner-up is from the episode Mirror Mirror, where Kirk convinces the Mirror Spock to consider the illogic of the Empire. We know from Deep Space Nine that this leads to Spock initiating a number of reforms and eventually overthrowing the Empire. But this glimmer of revolution in Spock as he heeds Kirk's words is really quite stirring. And finally, the last runner-up, this was another one that was really hard to take off the list. This is Spock's mind meld with the Horta in the first season episode, The Devil in the Dark. This is an incredible moment, and Leonard Nimoy really commits to this as he expresses the pain, suffering, and anguish of the Horta, whose offspring in the form of the silicon nodules, which were her eggs, were being destroyed by the mining activities. This is an incredible episode, and again, another one in that vein of, the ferocious monster, the inhuman creature who actually turns out to be quite sympathetic. Finally, my number one pick for best moment in Star Trek the Original Series, probably no surprise, this comes from the episode The City on the Edge of Forever, my personal favorite episode of the original series. Captain Kirk and Mr. Spock follow Dr. McCoy back in time to repair the damage that he's done. Eventually, they learn that he saved a woman, Edith Keeler, from a traffic accident, which led to, through a number of convoluted means, the Germans winning World War II. In the meantime, however, Kirk has fallen in love with Edith Keeler, and now in order to set the timeline right, he must allow her to die. McCoy goes to run into traffic to save her. Kirk stops him, and the anguish on his face is incredible. McCoy chastises him, "You deliberately stopped me. Do you know what you've done?" Kirk, unable to say a word, walks away, filled with anguish, while Spock says, "He knows, Doctor. He knows." An incredibly written and incredibly acted scene that definitely deserves the number one spot, in my opinion, for best moment in Star Trek the Original Series. So how about you? Do you agree with my picks? Are there other ones that you think should have been included? Let me know in the comments below. Also, let me know if you want me to keep doing these top 5 type videos. I had a lot of fun with this. It was a lot of fun kind of going back through these moments that I really love. But if you want more videos like this and more videos in general in the future, you have the Patreon supporters to thank. Thank you guys so much for your help. I really do appreciate it. Thanks to everyone else for liking, sharing, and subscribing if you feel this video is worth it. And even just watching, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much. I'll see you all in the next video. And until then, as always, live long and prosper.